Good morning, Year 10. Welcome to your first video lesson on Storm on the Island, which is one of our Power and Conflict anthology poems. So I'm hoping most of you have managed to dust off that anthology, unfurl it from wherever it's been hiding, and place it before you. If you haven't managed to find it, and unfortunately if it's at school, do not panic. Just make sure that you Google the title of the poem. You either write it out, it's a short poem, you might need to, or if you have the luxury, print it so you can gather your annotations today. Completely up to you, but if you don't have your poem, you may want to pause the video right now and go and hunt it down. But for those of you that are ready, let's go. You'll need your exercise books now or some lined paper. I'm going to dish out the key context behind the poem. So we're moving away from our war poems. We started discovering our anthology through the lens of war poetry. So we explored poems like Bayonet Charge and Kamikaze. There are still going to be some nice connections with those poems for Storm on the Island. However, we are moving away from that kind of war-torn landscape. There is definitely still physical conflict within this poem, as well as emotional conflict, and those links will become nice and clear as we go through this. So I want you to pop this down for me for a you do task, but let me talk through some of this context as you pop it down and summarise it in your books. So our author there was born in Northern Ireland in 1939. Now, if you know anything about the period within history, within Northern Ireland specifically, that was titled The Troubles, then you may well already have some sort of inkling as to what the poem could be about, Storm on the Island. So he was born in Northern Ireland in 1939, and his father, he was a man of nature. He farmed 50 acres in rural County Derry, and he was a cattle dealer. So just like within Bayonet Charge, where our author there had some real connection through his boyhood to nature, we have the same going on here. Much of his poetry seems to be close up and personal, or aligned with the rural sort of pastoral world, with farm life as its backdrop, if you will. And I've just titled it there. It was the world of his boyhood. So it's no mistake that at the epicenter of this poem is a storm. Okay, one of Mother Nature's many means of sort of wreaking havoc. So that's the first thing to take note. There will be power of nature in this poem because of it. Now, it's not just a document in nature's power. Our author also writes about our relationship, humanity's relationship with nature, and we've seen that before in so many of our poems: Exposure, Bayonet Charge, Kamikaze. Okay, so we have another connection there to what we've already studied. This poem is about humanity's relationship with nature, and surprise, surprise, we think that we have dominion over this earth as human beings, but yet again we are wrong. Okay, if you read this poem through an anthropocentric lens, through the idea that humanity sees itself as the centre of all existence, then this poem is almost like retaliation against that. Okay, to subvert that idea that we are at the centre. And what it does instead is shows our vulnerability in the face of nature's destructive forces. Okay, so like many of the other poems within our cluster that I've already mentioned, and you might want to pop this on your poem, that we have links to poems like Kamikaze and in Exposure, where we have the power of nature at its epicenter. As we move through this and we study poems like Extract from the Prelude, we also have the power of nature at the poem's heart as well. So the poet was one of the most important writers within 20th century sort of art, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1995. Now, that sort of award, and I'm sure you've all heard of the Nobel Peace Prize. It's not quite the exact same here, but it's an offshoot from that. The Nobel Prize for Literature is only awarded in very unique and sort of worthy instances where there is great achievement, not only for mankind, but also for literature. So the fact that he won that is quite telling for us. His poetry is going to harbour some quite profound lessons for the human race. It's going to have that sort of didactic, sort of teaching force behind it. So I did Google why you would get a Nobel Prize for Literature. I just wanted the definition for it, and it said there that it's bestowed upon those who during the preceding year, so the year before, shall have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. Okay, so he clearly had something quite profound going on in his work. Now think about the title for a second, Storm on the Island. So it's not Storm on the Island. It's not the storm on the island or a storm. Okay, I was thinking about this earlier. It doesn't have, we're at the bottom right hand side, by the way, year 10. It doesn't have the determiner a or the, attached to the front of it. It's just storm on the island. So no a storm or the storm. And for me and for many other critics of this poem, when I was doing my research, it kept cropping up. It seems to be that he is writing not just about one storm, like a literal storm that happened in Ireland and kind of wreaked havoc for its people, but really more about the power of nature in general, across borders and boundaries, but also this storm, and I'm doing air quotes here, this storm might be taken metaphorically as well, to comment maybe on conflict on a larger scale. Okay, so the storm here could be just a microcosm, a small version, a little version of something much bigger. Okay, something much grander on a larger scale. Okay, I've put here at the bottom for larger metaphorical storms that might take place in our life. Okay, so I have popped on there in red what seems to be quite important, but I want you to pause the video now. You've listened to me enough, give yourself a break for a second, pause the video now and just summarise all of that information that's probably jumbled up in your head right now while I'm rolling around into 4 distinct summative bullet points, okay? Because can we take all of this information on the context of the poem and whittle it down to just 4 key bullet points now. Even if you've been making notes, by the way, as I've been talking, I want you to draw a highlighted summary box, okay, where you condense whatever you wrote or you listened down into 4 bullet points. Okay, so take that now, pause the video. Okay, so what I want to do now is to have a little go of reading the poem with you, and then after I've read it, you are going to grab your booklet, which I would have emailed to you or attached on Google Classroom or Edulink or all 3 by now, and you will complete activity 1 after I've read the poem to you. Okay, it's nice and clear in the booklet. So activity 1 after I have read the poem. Here we go. Storm on the Island. We are prepared. We build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. This wizened earth has never troubled us with hay, so, as you see, there are no stacks or stooks that can be lost. Nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. You know what I mean. Leaves and branches can raise a tragic chorus in a gale so that you listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You might think that the sea is company, exploding comfortably down on the cliffs, but no. When it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat turned savage. We just sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Space is a salvo. We are bombarded with the empty air. Strange. It is a huge nothing that we fear. Okay, the first read, I stumbled over the words at one point because this poem is full to the brim of enjambment. There's there's very rare end stop lines. So I'm speaking and I'm vocalizing, I'm trying to pause with the enjambments midway through the line where they're written. But you can hear that pace, you can hear that urgency, you can hear the growing trepidation as the storm gains momentum. But that's all I'm going to say so far, because I want you to pause the video now, give yourself 5 minutes to complete activity 1. So pause. Okay, welcome back. We're going to move straight on. I'm trusting in you to be completing these activities as we go along. When I say pause, you complete. Otherwise, the lesson will lose the activities. Okay. Unfortunately, I miss you all, but I can't be there with you to do our usual sort of Socratic debate, bouncing off one another with ideas. So it's up to you to have them and hopefully feel reassured when I vocalize some of the things you might have written down. So, we like to do this whenever we study literature. I like to try and get to the very beating heart of our poems or our plays or our texts, whatever it might be. And I always ask you this question: so what's the big idea? Or what are the big ideas? Because as it's literature, there should be layers of meaning. So I want to give you 2 layers to start with. Okay, those are the 2 that I will bestow upon you in my generous heart. And then, of course, as you read the poem, come up with more ideas, more readings. Okay, but you need these 2 as a springboard, I believe. So, write in your book the question, what's the big idea then? I'm going to give you 2. The first is the surface level reading of the poem. Okay, and that is the literal. What is the poem literally about, as in what's going on, what's happening in the poem? We always start there, okay, and then we can build up from that. So, in summary then, our poetic voice, or narrator or speaker, whichever noun phrase you're using there, describes how an island community thinks that it is well prepared. You know, at the beginning of the poem, they think they are well prepared for the storm, the imminent storm, the storm that's about to rage. But as the poem progresses, and you heard me speed up, you heard the urgency, okay, as that moves up and progresses, the poetic voice's confidence seems to lessen, seems to wane, to lower, as the storm's power heightens. So you can almost see that, imagine a pair of scales in your mind. At the start of the poem, humanity is higher up, okay, it has this superior position. And then as the storm begins to rage and gain momentum, okay, the scales move and the storm takes that superior position in that hierarchy of power. Okay, so the storm is described as gaining impetus, power, sound, energy. Okay, and at the end, the poem concludes with leaving us readers with the sense that at the end of all of this, that we, humanity, have been largely foolish, misguided, you know, in our efforts to prove that we are indomitable, that we are strong and you know, unwavering in our powers. But really, when it comes down to it, nature's potency reigns. Okay, we know that if we leave this earth, if humanity leaves the earth, nature will continue to thrive. And to be honest, will thrive in our wake because we are gone. Okay, so the storm here, in a very literal sense, is displaying the power of nature compared to humanity. That for me is the obvious reading. It's the one that most people will grab onto for this poem, but there's something far more political, metaphorical, allegorical about this poem. Okay, there are deeper meanings here. So I'm just going to grab my spade, I'm going to dig a couple of layers down, and then we find ourselves with metaphorically, what's the big idea? Now, you would have had to have done some research on the context of the poem to gain this one. This one probably wouldn't have just arrived at your door. So this one's on me. So in a political sense then, we might well read the poem as an extended metaphor. Remember, an extended metaphor is when a metaphor lasts for more than 1 or 2 lines. It runs the whole way through the poem. Okay, from start to finish, it's an extended metaphor for the political storm. Yeah, that metaphorical storm, that chaos that raged across Northern Ireland in the second half of the 20th century. Okay, so through that lens, the storm then, metaphorically, that's pummeling the island, notice how it's phonetically very similar to the name of the country, island. I put it at the top. I kind of spelt it purposely wrong on the literal one to give you a clue. Okay, not the island, like a separate area of land, but island is in the country. Yeah, so the Troubles. So the storm that's pummeling the island is potentially a metaphor for the great violence that took place in Northern Ireland during that period that it has been, come to known collectively as the Troubles. Okay. There was a lot of religious conflict during that time, Protestants, Catholics at loggerheads. You can do a lot more research on this, and I suggest that you do, but for the sake of this video, so that it's not 5,000 hours long, I'll leave you with that. Okay, that's for you to do some further research. The Troubles in Northern Ireland in the latter half of the 20th century, the poem could be politically a comment on that, like the storm as a microcosm for the greater conflicts and violence throughout that period in Ireland. Ireland. Okay, so 2 layers, 2 big ideas to get us started. I love this. I love that there's a little kind of Easter egg, let's call it, in the poem, and in the title of the poem specifically. So look at the title at the top of this here on the board. If you look at the first word, storm, the second word, on, and then the first letter of the third word, it actually spells out Stormont. Okay, which is actually the name of the government buildings of Northern Ireland in Belfast, and they were very much the epicentre of the violence that was happening during the Troubles. That is just genius. Okay, that can't have been a mistake. He must have thought about that and left that little Easter egg in the title, that literal nudging, a little nudging for the reader to go, look, this is not just about a storm. This is not just about nature's potency, although it is in one way. It has that layered, hidden, metaphorical, symbolic meaning. Okay? I'm not going to read this all out, but just that first line there, it says, images within the poem of terrorist violence abound in the poem. Okay, so you've got loads of violent lexical choices like blast, exploding, fear, bombarded. I mean, even when you hear that word, bombarded, you can hear the plosives, but, okay, like explosions, like artillery fire. Okay, so not just a literal storm, but also the violence happening in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. The first 8 letters spell out that title of the government building in Belfast, and I've already mentioned the phonetic similarity of Ireland, our island home, and then Ireland, the location. Okay, so a nice little Easter egg for you that you might not have noticed unless I had made it explicit. I do want you to pause again. Number 1, to just digest what I've just said, make sure you're making notes on this, and then to complete activity 2 and 3 in your booklet. Okay, this might take you 20 minutes, a little bit longer now. This sort of video, to be honest, would be about 2 hours of lesson time. So don't panic if this is taking you longer. You're listening to me in the lecture half and then you're pausing to do your notes and the activities. So I would usually, as you know, study a poem with you over 2 hours. Okay, so do this over 2 days if you like. Pause the video, make a note of where you get to. But activity 2 and 3 need to be done now. So please pause the video and I'll see you in a second. Okay, now that we're back, we are going to go ahead with our annotations and cover our poem and that nice colourful neat notes that we like to make as our little cheat guide when we go to revise in year 11 this poem. Okay, so let's take a look at the first half of the poem. If you remember from my literal summary, the first part, I like to think of it as it's in 3 parts. This poem has to do with the poetic voices, the speaker's confidence in their preparations for the oncoming storm. Okay, so let's look at the first line. We are prepared. We build our houses squat, sink walls in rock and roof them with good slate. Immediately, there are some key ideas evoked. So look at the first line, we. So there's this double use of collective personal pronoun. This seems to be reference to a community of people who are collectively confident in their preparations for the storm. Okay, we are prepared. That very short, simple declarative speaks volumes about their belief, their self-belief as, you know, a human in the wake of danger or in the wake of wider conflict, if we look at it through a political lens. Okay, we build our houses squat, so we even, you know, calculate the onset of these things, and we ensure that when houses are built, that they are built in such a way as to withstand the violent gales of storm. Okay, so you could say this is quite hubristic. Okay, remember, hubristic means prideful, excessive pride. Okay, look at us, we are prepared, we have all our resources that we need. Our houses are even architecturally sound to withstand a storm. We even sink our walls in rock and we roof them with good slate. Okay, so this whole section here is very much testament to the speaker's great confidence in their island community. The simple adjective prepared as well seems to suggest that they've grown accustomed, they've grown used to the elements, the fierce elements. On a literal sense, maybe this is literally an island that gets lots of storms. And so it's happened before, it will happen again, they're prepared. But if we take it as an allegory for the troubles in Northern Ireland, then this person, this speaker, is using this as a metaphor for just how accustomed they are to the violence and the chaos and the fear that surrounds them during this period, during this conflict. Okay? So when you look at the first two declaratives that make up the first line, we are prepared, we build our houses squat. Okay, they actually make up iambic pentameter. So there's that strong heartbeat, regular rhythm that you have to align. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. We are prepared, we build our houses squat. Okay, could you hear that? The heartbeat, try it yourself. And that strong, regular rhythm through the use of iambic pentameter, the kind of the 5 sets of heartbeats there, give a real strong sense of composure, solidity. And I think they mirror the robust buildings that they've prepared. They're strong and regular. So that's really nice as well. Now, look at the green lexical choices. Sink walls in rock, roof them with good slate. So you've got rock and slate, which are fairly kind of solid, durable materials. You've got verbs like sink and roof, again, which are proactive verbs of preparation. So this whole lexical field in the second line is of safety and security. Now, when you team all of that I've just said with the fact that the second line is end stopped, down here by the way in the green box, the fact that that second line is end stopped, which means we have the full stop at the end, that is like a physical reinforcement on the page. That's what a full stop is. It's to end that sentence, to keep that sentence contained in that part with its clauses. So the end stop line once again reinforces that sense of security, confidence, but even hubris, even excessive pride and confidence that they have. And remember, look at what happens after this moment. Okay, after this end stop line, after this moment of composure, you see the doubt start to seep in already, and there's a preponderance of enjambment. The wise in earth has never troubled us with hay, so you see there is no stacks or stooks that can be lost, nor are there trees which might prove company when it blows full blast. And I'm out of breath because that whole section is full up to the brim with enjambment. And so it seems to contradict the opening confidence. If they're so confident, this speaker, why are they losing that composure so early on? Why is it there so early on? Okay, so this wizened earth has never troubled us. So the earth is wizened, which means it's not necessarily fruitful. It hasn't brought forth loads of crops or bounty. It hasn't troubled us with hay, like it hasn't produced hay. So there aren't any stacks of hay that can be lost to the fierce wind. So we don't need to worry about that. And there aren't really any trees either. There aren't many trees around here. It's quite barren. That, you know, might give company, prove company when it starts blowing full blast. So he's quite desperately trying to find silver linings in this situation. So we haven't got a fruitful sort of soil. It's not, you know, it's not bringing us, you know, loads of hay. We can't lose those, and there's not loads of trees, so they can't make a racket when the storm raises. So what is it that they actually fear then? They don't fear the loss of material things. Okay, that's not what they fear so far. Let's see where we are. Yeah, wizened means dried up. The island is barren. Okay, so for me that suggests quite a hard life actually. All the energy or nourishment of the soil has been dried out of it. Could that be a metaphor for the people of this island? That they've had to suffer so much hardship that they themselves have dried up. Has their happiness dried up, their hope dried up? Okay, so I think the wizened earth is part of that ongoing extended metaphor. Okay, so the trees here might prove company, of course, if they had any, when it blows full blast. So we've got the use of personification there of the trees might prove company. And so because of the fact there isn't any trees, that makes the island seem quite vulnerable again. So trees are often used as a canopy from the glaring sun, or you hide behind a tree if you're playing like a stealthy game on your PS4 for protection, right? But there's no such thing here. There are no trees to prove company when it blows full blast. So maybe what they fear is their exposure, their vulnerability, their lack of power. Maybe this is a poem about lack of power, guys, for humans, okay, and their vulnerability. So that's there. We also have, look at that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, or sticks that can be lost. Look at the enjambment there midway through. That's the use of the full stop midway through a line. Sorry, that's caesura, the caesura. I'm at the bottom right hand side of the board, guys. Now that slows the pace right up for a second, and I always say if there is a caesura, it means the author wants you to hover over the word before, and that word is lost. And I just feel that is so telling. Okay, that is so telling. There's more, you know, caesuras later on down, but that one I want to talk about first. Lost. But the idea is of loss. That is what they fear. Loss of self, loss of hope, loss of identity, you know, as they're chewed up and spit out in this conflict. Okay, there's another caesura 2 lines down, just after blast, where you have the colon. Okay, and again, you're hovering over that word blast, and that has a really strong phonetic sound, a really strong plosive. Okay, so again, the sounds, the phonetics of this are mirroring the great violence of this storm, whatever it might be. I like that there's a little bit of colloquial language straight after that. You know what I mean? Okay, so again, it adds a sense of this is every day. This is a familiar thing for them. They're not dressing this up in fancy words. Okay, so the leaves and the branches raise a tragic chorus in a gale so that you listen to the thing you fear, forgetting that it pummels your house too. Okay, so listening to the sound of the storm, the thing that you fear, that's pummeling your house as well. Okay, so it's pummeling your house. Could the house be a metaphor for your sense of self, for you as a person? Okay, that it's rattling you. There's so much you could talk about here. I'm sure you have your own ideas as well, so please pop them down. But that's where I'm starting with this. Okay, so let's look at this, the second part on my slide here. I just want to remind you of that challenge term. You might want to pause the video now and write that down. Anthropomorphism. Fancy, scary sounding word, but it just means that you give human behaviours to an animal or an object, and that's in this poem, of course, because we have the wind and the sea breeze that are giving sort of animalistic qualities. Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. So here it is. But there are no trees, no natural shelter. You might think that the sea is company. So there's one of your first anthropomorphisms, exploding comfortably down on the cliff, but no. When it begins, the flung spray hits the very windows, spits like a tame cat turned savage. So that simile there, like a tame cat turned savage, is another example of anthropomorphism, giving kind of human qualities to an animal within the simile as well. Okay, so what have we got? Look at that first line in red. I've colour-coded it for my annotations. There are no trees, no natural shelter. So the poetic voice quickly dismisses the idea that nature can offer any comfort here. Okay, any release from their fears and from the violence of this storm. There is no company, no comfort in the trees themselves. And that just reaffirms, that reiterates the fact that these islanders, they must have man-made shelters in order to withstand the storm, but they seem inferior to the winds, to the storm itself. So man-made is inferior because it offers, nature offers no protection, and their shelters here are being rattled, are being pummeled. Okay, so I'm not going to reference the top bit again. I've said it already, but it's up there too. But this here, the first line again, you've got no, two negations in really close proximity. Okay, now that disrupts the flow of the poem, but there are no trees, no shelter, no natural shelter. It's not, we're falling out of sort of any sense of rhyme or reason here, and the two negations disrupt that flow, and it shows just how dangerous this time is. No, they're forceful lexical negations, or lexical choices, sorry. And you've got the subtle, the short caesura, it's very short pause with the comma. But again, it shows just how unprepared, how ill-prepared they are, how much doubt is here now in this moment. Before I talk about the simile, which was that cat turned savage, I want to talk about the oxymoron in the purple, exploding comfortably. Now remember, an oxymoron is when you place two opposite words side by side. Exploding is a violent verb, and comfortably is a very reassuring adverb. They don't fit together, and I think that's just to show the confusion, the chaos of this scene. The fact that the speaker has no power here to make sense of what's taken place. Do you remember that I said to you that at war, often language falls short? How do we really describe the atrocities of war? That's why art is so difficult when it's trying to capture conflict and deaths and violence. Is it that the speaker is struggling to make sense of the violence during this time in his country's history, and so words fall short here? They're not good enough. Okay, they aren't available to him, and so he uses those confused words, okay, for this moment. Okay, so the sea and its water, it hits the very windows and it spits. Can you hear the sibilance there? Spits. It's violent, isn't it? Like a tame cat that's turned savage. So it's sudden, it's unpredictable. A tame cat would be your pet, right? That you trust and you get comfort from. But imagine it turning on you violently, and what it would cause for you emotionally, that sense of vulnerability. So the familiar sea that they witness so often is suddenly turned threatening and dangerous. And think about that right now. Think about everything that's going on, all the things that were so familiar to us, going to school and seeing our peers and our teachers, that is so suddenly became dangerous for us. And look at the confusion and the doubt and the vulnerability that we all feel in this moment. That's what's going on here as well. Okay, and all these people can do is to sit tight while wind dives and strafes invisibly. Wow, I'm just thinking about it right now, how much of a metaphor that could be for our current situation and the world's vulnerability. Space is a salvo. So salvo is kind of repetitive artillery fire. So the whole, everywhere is dangerous. Everywhere the speaker sort of sees or goes, he senses danger. We are bombarded. Look at that, bombarded. Three kind of sort of plosive moments in that violent verb with the empty air. Look, nature and the wind, it's an invisible thing largely. No, not always, but largely. And the storm's violence is largely invisible. There's no physical kind of like giant, pummeling through the air towards them. And he says it's strange that it's a huge nothing that we fear. Because this storm is invisible, but it's potent, and so it's nothing, but it's what we fear, okay? Because despite its, lack of visibility, it is dangerous, okay? But if we take it as a metaphor for the troubles in Northern Ireland, then again, it's that things can happen so suddenly, can change so suddenly. It's these sort of hidden dangers that are around every corner. And it causes such anxiety and threat to hover over this poem. So there we have it. We start with this absolute sense of confidence and we see it whittled away. And by the end of the poem, this speaker is absolutely made inferior, vulnerable, filled with trepidation and fear. And that poem really resonates. I think it's a poem that moves beyond just Ireland at that time in history. I think it's a poem that we can all sort of understand something from in our lives, how our lives can change so suddenly, how we fear the unknown. That kind of common idea comes through as well. So, I have spoken for a long time. It really is now the last slide of my lesson. I've got tasks for you. So you have the task on the board right now. So you're going to create this table in your exercise book, and this is just a little moment for you to start thinking about the connections between the poems so far that we've studied. Okay, so look at the table. I've chosen some of the ones that I think go really well together: bayonet charge, exposure, remains, kamikaze, and now storm on the island. Once you've made the table, you'll see on the top portion of the table, you've got some of the themes of power and conflict that we've seen in the anthology already. Once you've actually made the table, all you need to do is place ticks for each of the poems, going along, starting with the top or the bottom, wherever you want to begin. If you feel that those ideas, like power of humans, power of nature, are actually seen in the poem. So for example, for the one that we've just done, Storm on the Island, power of humans is actually spoken about in the poem, but the whole point is to show its absence. So I would still tick it, but I'd probably put in little brackets, lack of or absence. It's still talking about that as a theme, but it's not there. Power of nature, absolutely. The effects of conflict, absolutely. I mean, look at this speaker, the effects that it has on him. The reality of conflict, absolutely. Loss and absence, I think loss, because it's loss of control. It's a loss of hope. That's certainly there. Maybe not memory, okay. Anger, that's up to you whether you think that's the main thing. Guilt, maybe not. Fear, definitely. Pride, definitely. Identity in a very abstract way, yes. And individual experiences, yes and no. Because this poem actually talks about a collective ordeal rather than just an individual one. So be careful with that one. You get the idea. Once you've done that, and you all need to do that, you've got some extension activities for most and some. Most of you should choose 2 of the poems in this table and write a short paragraph describing why you chose those themes for those poems. So where are they in the poem? And then you've got a sum as well. Once you finish that, you're then going to finish all of the other activities in your booklet. And this is why I said to you, your Storm on the Island booklet, that is, this is going to take you 2 lessons. Okay, you can always go back, you can re-listen to my portions, but this will take you 2 lessons because the activities in the booklet alone take time. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments below this video. To attend this lesson, you will need to comment anyway, with a thank you or a I'm here, it's whoever, just to know that you're here. I will need everyone to do this, okay? I will need to know with proof that you have attended this lesson. And the quickest, easiest way of doing that is to comment below, okay, with your name or whatever. If your name's already on your username, then just hello or thank you or whatever you want to put. Okay, or a question if you have one. But you need to do this. We won't have time in lessons, okay, to go over this poem really, apart from revision in year 11. So this poem is done remotely. We will be doing 2 more poems in the same style, and then of course I will be doing some lessons on A Christmas Carol for you as well. So that's what the next half term has in store with you. It's very literature heavy, which I know most of you really enjoy. So it'll be A Christmas Carol with a couple of poems peppered in as well.